It is 5:43 in the morning. Your flight doesn't board for another hour and 40 minutes. But somewhere in this city, someone has already been working on it for the better part of an hour. Not at the airport, not in the cockpit. They've checked the weather at your departure and your destination. They've calculated how much fuel needs to be loaded, they've selected a backup airport in case something goes wrong, and they've drafted the legal document that will authorize your flight to operate. By the time your pilots walk onto that aircraft, that document is already waiting for them. And next to the captain's signature line, there is another name, a name you will never know. This person is called an airline dispatcher, and under US federal law, they share equal legal responsibility for the safety of your flight, with the pilot, not a supporting role, not advisory, equal. Federal aviation regulations are unambiguous. The pilot in command and the aircraft dispatcher are jointly responsible for the pre-flight planning and safe conduct of every flight they release. Either one can stop it, neither one can release it alone. This is how commercial aviation has worked in the United States since 1938. Most passengers have never heard of the person on the other side of that signature. A dispatcher's shift begins hours before their first departure. For every flight in their schedule, they build a plan from scratch. They start with the route, choosing not just a path from point A to point B, but the most efficient corridor through that day's wind patterns. At altitude, the jet stream can either add 40 minutes to a flight or shave 40 minutes off it. The dispatcher decides which way to go. Then comes the fuel, and the fuel calculation is more involved than most people realize. There is the amount needed to reach the destination. There is contingency fuel for unexpected routing changes or stronger than forecast headwinds. There is fuel to reach the alternate airport, the backup, in case the destination becomes unusable. And there is a final reserve that must remain on board when the aircraft lands, untouched, regardless of what happens en route. The dispatcher calculates all of it, then the captain reviews it. If they agree on the route, the fuel, the alternate, the weather picture, they both sign the flight release. The flight is authorized. If either one believes the flight cannot operate safely as planned, they say so. The release is not issued. The flight does not go. It is a system built around a simple principle. No single person should have to make that call alone. Once the aircraft is in the air, most people assume the dispatcher's job is done. It isn't. A typical airline dispatcher monitors between 10 and 25 active flights at once. Each one is a moving situation, changing weather, adjusting fuel burns, air traffic control delays rippling through the route. The dispatcher watches all of it. The primary tool for staying in contact with the crew is called ACARS, the Aircraft Communications Addressing and Reporting System. It is a data link that transmits short digital messages between the aircraft and the ground, appearing on a dedicated display in the cockpit. Through ACARS, the dispatcher receives automatic position and fuel reports from each aircraft, and they send messages back. Weather updates at the destination, rerouting suggestions to avoid a developing storm, notifications of a ground delay at the arrival airport. The pilots are flying. The dispatcher is managing everything else. When something goes wrong, a medical emergency, a mechanical fault, a destination that has just gone below landing minimums in a storm, the dispatcher is already working the problem from the ground, recalculating, coordinating, communicating, before the crew even has to ask. On the evening of December 28, 1978, a United Airlines DC-8 was on approach to Portland when the crew noticed a problem with the landing gear. They entered a holding pattern to diagnose it. They circled and circled. The gear problem was real, but manageable. What the crew didn't notice, in the focus on the landing gear, was the fuel state. It was falling towards zero. Contact with company dispatch happened late, and it wasn't enough. Both engines flamed out from fuel exhaustion on final approach. The aircraft struck trees and came down in a Portland suburb. 10 of the 189 people on board were killed. The investigation found no single catastrophic failure. Just a crew that had become entirely focused on one problem, and a dispatch system that had not been engaged actively enough to interrupt that focus from the outside. That accident became one of the foundational cases in aviation safety. It showed precisely and painfully what the dispatcher is there for. Not to duplicate the crew's work, but to hold the wider picture when the crew cannot. Commercial aviation is sometimes described as the safest form of transport in history. That record is not an accident. It is the result of decades of deliberate system design, layers of independent checks, each one built to catch what the others might miss. The dispatcher is one of those layers. When your flight runs smoothly, when it arrives on time, when a diversion is handled quickly, when the fuel load is exactly right for the tailwind that appeared 2 hours into the cruise, someone on the ground made decisions that contributed to that outcome. They will never appear on a passenger manifest. You will never hear their name over the intercom. But their signature is on every flight release your aircraft will ever carry.